Mute.
Welcome to Living a Graceful Life. I'm your host, Denise Medved, and I'm also the creator and founder of the Ageless Grace Brain Health Program worldwide. I'm here to remind you that it's never too late to begin making choices to create the life that you want to live. And it's also never too early to start making those choices. First, what is grace? Grace is something unexpected. It's something possibly even undeserved. It's something that can be divinely bestowed on you or can possibly be bestowed on you by a friend or a family member. More importantly, grace is something that you can bestow on yourself based on those choices that you make to invite into your life. So we're going to talk about how grace affects not only the physical body, but also the mental, the brain, the emotional, your spirit, and your spirituality, your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self, all with each other to make you who you are. Tonight, we're talking about nourishing your spiritual self. We've talked about the body, we've talked about the brain, we've talked about your emotions, and now we're talking about your spiritual self. Now, this is not about any particular religion or belief system. This is about your own personal and private practice, let's call it, where you might connect with, maybe on a daily basis, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Maybe it's something you wish you could do, is connect with something greater than yourself, something beyond you, something perhaps divine, something that is a higher power. Whatever you want to call it, it requires that you set aside some time on a regular basis to connect with whatever that is that nourishes the spirit of you. That's more than just your spirit. Your spirit is the animation of your physical body. Your spirit is the expression of who you are beyond your clothes or your makeup or your job or your role as a mother or your whatever it is you do in life. That is your spirit. But your spirituality is how you invite in that connection to something big. So there are so many ways to do that. In a religious system or belief system, commonly there's a location that you may go to be in community with other people who are like-minded, and you may pray or sing or dance or worship in some way. Again, I'm not talking about that organized way of connecting to the spiritual. I'm talking about your own personal invention and creation of how it nourishes you to connect to your spirituality or your spiritual self. So what are some of the ways you can do that? Well, one very simple way is to find a day book or some kind of email system that emails you a message every single day that you can read. Typically, it's an inspiration or a reading or a story, something that brings you up, lifts you up, makes you feel connected to more than just yourself. That's a simple thing to do. There are many day books out there. There are so many wonderful inspirational readings. There are many books that are long and voluminous, and you could in fact read a page a day or read a page every 2 or 3 days. It's your spiritual practice, and so you are the one who's in charge of designing what it's going to look like and how it's going to feel and what time of day you're going to do it. So readings from a book, readings from an email, readings from a text that's sent to you on your cell phone, those can be one way of a spiritual practice. What it does is it causes you to stop. It causes you to be still. It causes you to listen. It causes you to think with your mind or awareness or consciousness. And when we take that time out from the busy hustle and bustle of life, the texts, the emails, the bings and the dings, and all sounds that are pulling us every day, as well as people and obligations and responsibilities that we can get so caught up in that we forget to stop. We forget to breathe. We forget to take a moment out. We forget to connect. So creating that spiritual practice is nourishment. It's just like feeding your body. You're feeding that spiritual part of yourself that is not your body, that's more than your body. So journaling, reading is one way, and journaling is another way. Writing, getting a blank book and just taking time. How much time? 10 minutes? It doesn't have to be an hour, doesn't have to be a half an hour. Take 10 minutes. Maybe it's first thing in the morning. Maybe it's every afternoon at 4 o'clock. When you stop what you're doing or before you begin what you're doing, and you write. And what do you write? It doesn't matter. Write the first thing that comes into your mind, whatever that may be. Look out a window and write what you see and why it inspires you. Look around your home and your surroundings and write about something you see. Why is that pillow on the chair? Does it mean something to you? Why does that plant that you have give you pleasure and feed you and nourish you? Why does that four-legged furry family member inspire you and give you love? Just write. Taking time out to journal is a wonderful way of connecting to a spiritual practice. Now, what about something else like perhaps walking a labyrinth? Walking a labyrinth has been a spiritual practice for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. They are all over the place now. It's literally a spiritual walk where you set an intention at the beginning of that walk. You could call it a prayer. It could be a request. It could be something that you want more of in your life or that you would like to make more time for in your life. And then silently, quietly, you walk that path and you take all of its turns and you follow the trail or the path of the labyrinth until you get to the center, however long that takes. And of course, that's up to you. And then you receive the gift that you have just given yourself. You have granted yourself grace in that moment to take time out and to connect. And then you walk out of the labyrinth in gratitude for the time that you've spent. There are many labyrinths at churches, in gardens, in botanical centers. It's amazing these days how many labyrinths there are. You don't have to travel somewhere to find one. You can even make your own. A simple spiral that you might outline with a rope in your yard and follow that trail as you're contemplating. Contemplation, being still, being silent, going within in order to connect without and beyond. So other ways are meditation, for example. Many people meditate in different ways. And some people say, oh, I've tried to meditate, but after a minute and a half, I catch myself looking up at the ceiling and wondering why I haven't washed the drapes lately, or see a web that needs to be attended to, or hearing a ding in the kitchen and thinking, gee, I should go see what that is. But that doesn't have to be a form of meditation that follows a rule. If that kind of meditation works for you, that's awesome. Incorporate it into your life. Again, a specific time for these things tends to work best. A certain time of the morning, a certain time of the evening. Maybe you incorporate some nourishment for your spiritual self into the morning and the evening, or 2 or 3 times a day. It's totally up to you. It's nourishing yourself, not someone else. So meditation can also be up to you. Meditation is being still. It's being silent. Or it could be a walking meditation. You could move through nature and look up and around you as you walk, or look down at your feet and the path that you're following. You can design your own meditation and your own way of walking a path, so to speak. So I mentioned nature. That's another way to connect with the divine or connect with something that is magnificent and huge. I love going out into nature. It's amazing what you can do if you invite all of your senses to truly be in touch with what's going on around you. Needless to say, that doesn't work quite as well for most of us. If you go to a busy park where there are lots of people walking by, or where there might be people that you know calling out your name, or even with your dog, it might be pulling you in a certain direction or stopping you when you aren't ready to stop. Ideally, a walking meditation or a communion with nature is done alone, ideally in a silent or quiet place where you're not with lots of other people or there are not lots of other distractions. So, for example, go outside and what do you smell? Close your eyes and just smell the air. That's a form of being connected, right? What if you open your eyes and you look for every tiny detail? Can you see the acorn in that squirrel's mouth over there? Can you see that one particular leaf on the tree that seems to be waving in a breeze, even though other leaves aren't waving? Can you hear? Can you hear the call of birds? Or can you hear the sound of a dog barking in the distance? Just again, taking that time for yourself is also taking that time to nourish your spiritual being, that part of you that is connected to the physical body, to the mental part of you, to the emotional part of you. I have noticed that when I take time out of my busy day, and quite frankly, I do this every day, usually twice a day, usually toward the very first half hour when I wake up, and usually in the half hour before I go to bed. When I take that time and I do a reading, or I write in my journal, or I look out my window and perhaps write about what I see, or just contemplate what I'm seeing, or when I, for example, just take a moment and say a prayer or read a poem, I've discovered that what usually happens right away is that I feel calmer. I feel more peaceful. I feel more assurance that everything is going to be okay, regardless of what's going on in my busy brain, for example, thinking about this thing I have to do, or that thing I have to do, or what this person said yesterday, or what I'm going to do later today. What spiritual nourishment is being in the moment, right here, right now. I've heard it said that God's time and man's time only intersects at one point, and that point is the present. It's not what happened 20 minutes ago or yesterday or last week or last. It's not what you're going to do next week or tomorrow. It's that intersection right here, right now, of really being fully conscious and aware of where you are, of what you are, of who you are, and that you are part of something bigger and greater, a greater community, a greater communion than just Denise, who's sitting in this chair right now. So there's so many ways of practicing nourishment for your spiritual self. Decide, if you haven't already incorporated that into your life, is morning best for you? Is evening best for you? Would it be best for you if you did it 3 times a week or on the weekend only? But taking that time out is really important. I personally have seen that when I do my practice of connecting first thing in the morning and first thing in the evening, my whole day is different. Not only do I feel more peaceful right away, as I said, but I also feel more gratitude. Gratitude is a huge thing. Gratitude can shift the most horrible day. It can shift the most urgent and pressing matter. It can shift the sadness, the grief. Gratitude can wrap everything that's going on in a blanket of comfort, in a blanket of hope, in a blanket of feeling and being aware of how truly blessed we are at any moment. There's that grace again, unexpected, undeserved perhaps. We can't do anything to be given the gift of grace. However, we can make choices in our life to invite more grace in. Grace is also pleasure. It's something that is pleasing to us, and not just like eating an ice cream cone. I find that very pleasurable. I also like chocolate, but inviting something in that truly gives me pleasure. And that's what that morning and evening practice does for me. It can be 5 minutes, it can be 10 minutes, but it's a gift of grace and spiritual nourishment that only you can give yourself, no one else. And once I do that for myself, I've discovered that my whole day seems to go better. I suddenly remember what I've thought about, what I've been inspired by in the morning when I'm standing in a long line in the grocery store and someone's paying with change, and it could be so easy to get irritated and snappy or put all my stuff down and get out of line. But I remember that nourishment that I gave myself in the morning, and it makes me calmer. It makes me more apt to be in a loving place. So what is a loving place? A loving place, first of all, can be for yourself, where you're not so hard on yourself, where you're not always demanding something of yourself that either you can't give or you have to push to give. It's being in a place where you can actually love yourself, where you are today. Maybe that's not as fabulous as it was yesterday. Maybe you're nervous about where you're going to be tomorrow or the next day, but you can love yourself right now. And that's part of giving yourself spiritual nourishment. Now, it's also about loving other people, maybe loving family, children, spouses, people who are right there with you every day, and they can be so irritating. And giving that self time to be nourished in the morning or the evening or both can help you be more loving toward those people who can get on your nerves at times. That's just the reality of life, right? And always remember that we can get on their nerves, right? Another thing is having more love and patience toward other people, like that grocery store line I just described, when people are getting out of line and getting back in, or paying with change, or having conversations with the clerk while 10 of us are waiting. If you can give yourself nourishment, it can also give yourself a little kindness toward the person who's holding everybody up. Maybe they need that for their spiritual nourishment. Maybe they need you to smile at them, to lift them up for the day. Maybe they need you to make a comment. And when you have connected with that part of yourself that is loving and kind and compassionate, that is greater than who you are, then that gives you the ability to be able to look at that person and really see them. Just like you were looking at nature and really seeing it, or looking at your furry, four-footed family member and really seeing them. Again, it's so easy for us to rush from one thing to the next. So easy to have so many things on our plate, on our agenda, on our calendar, on our cell phone. There's so many things that we can be busy with. Taking that moment or two out to nourish yourself spiritually, I believe, is critical to not only my well-being, to the way I measure my day at the end and say, what good things happened today? Or what am I grateful for that happened today? But also to just live in this world and say, I have been here all these years. I've been present. I've noticed what's going on around me. I've participated. I've been in community. I've looked into people's eyes as I'm talking to them or as they're talking to me. I have been present in the moment. And there's no greater gift of grace or spiritual nourishment than giving yourself the gift of truly being present. Now, most of us can't sustain that for the entire day or for hours even, but we can call it in over and over and over again throughout the day. A minute here, 3 minutes there, a reminder here, a reminder there. And before you know it, we are practicing being in the moment more than we have ever practiced it before. You can also give yourself reminders. It could be something simple like, every time I see the color red today, I'm going to remind myself to take a deep breath and be in the moment. Every time I see a yellow car pass, I'm going to take a deep breath and be in the moment. Look around, appreciate where I am, what I'm doing, who I'm with. Those are a form of spiritual practice as well, a form of spiritual nourishment for yourself. Another thing that I like to do is sticky notes. They're fabulous. Write something on the sticky note, or maybe not. Maybe you just put the color pink and stick it around on your car, inside the dash, on your front door, in your bedroom, in your kitchen, wherever you might happen to go that day. And when you see that sticky note, you say, it's time to be present. I was rushing from one thing to the next. Let me come in, let me collect and gather and be right here now. So those are just a few ideas of ways that you can start to incorporate a spiritual nourishment for yourself every day, or maybe you do one already. That's wonderful too. You might want to tweak it or add something new, because one of the things that happens sometimes with a practice that you do regularly is sometimes it becomes automatic. Sometimes it becomes just a thing that you do at this time every day, and you're not really getting all the juiciness from that moment, from that time that you take out for yourself. So tweak it a little bit, change it up, add something to it, do it in a different place or location in your home or in your yard or at a park. Make it a little different so that it feels new and fresh and awesome and wonderful. I always think about my dad when I think of the word wonder, because he was like a little child right up until he was 76, and his soul took flight, because he was always seeing the wonder in things. He'd say, oh, look at this. Oh, look at that flower. Oh, look at that butterfly. Oh, look at that woman's beautiful face. He was filled with wonder. And the reason I think that he had that wonder is that he woke up every day and he settled in to the present moment. And he went to bed every night and he settled in to the present moment. It can be a practice that also helps you with your sleep. I take that hour before sleep and I start to alert my brain that I'm winding down. Something's about to happen. It's called going to bed, going to sleep. And I'll do things like fix myself a cup of tea, but then I also do things like a reading or I write in what I call a gratitude journal. And you can just write 5 things that you're grateful for that happened today. And I'll be honest, sometimes the 5 things I write are things like, I'm glad this day is over. I'm glad I had a bed to climb into. I'm glad I have a cup of hot tea. Sometimes it is literally just a closure on my day. And then I think, boy, I am lucky. I do have a bed to climb into. I do have a cup of warm tea. I have blankets to keep me warm. I have a cat who's going to curl up and keep my feet warm and purr. The universal sound of peace, they say, is the purr, and I would tend to agree. So I hope this will inspire you all to think about inviting nourishment for your spiritual self into your life if you don't already, or maybe changing it, tweaking it, stepping it up a notch if you already have some kind of spiritual practice. And what I'd like to do is show you a little physical movement that might embody the idea of slowing down, taking time out, giving yourself some spiritual nourishment. The tools of Ageless Grace are to stimulate the brain. They stimulate the 5 primary functions of the brain, but they also stimulate the body. And you know that movement and dance and any kind of moving your arms around, your legs around, your body, your spine, will stimulate you, especially when it's done to music. And that is a form of nourishment in itself. That's one I didn't mention before. Dance as a spiritual practice. Put on music as a spiritual practice. So we're going to put on some music right now and we're going to move. And number one, it will remind you physically of what we've just talked about that we can do to nourish the spiritual self. So wherever you are, push back from your laptop or your cell phone, take your shoes off. I'm always barefoot in every episode. And find a comfortable chair for yourself because we're going to trigger our brain by figuring out how to do this in a chair rather than standing. So this tool that we're going to do is called Tri Chi, not Tai Chi, but Tri Chi, and it's slow motion movement. Physically, it helps us with stability. Mentally, it helps us with strategic planning, memory and recall, analytical thinking, creativity and imagination, and kinesthetic learning. So join me, don't just watch me, join me as we practice a little Tai Chi. So let's start off in slow motion and let your foot and your hand float upward. Just as it floats down, immediately let the other hand and foot float upward. Take your time. Don't feel rushed. Feel graceful. Feel elegant. Let your movement be seamless and connected from one side of the body to the other. And now let's change the movement to the shape of a rainbow, up and over. The minute that foot touches down, do it on the opposite side. Continue like one silken thread, one movement connected to the other movement. Now you could do anything when you practice this yourself, as long as it's in slow motion. How about both feet? Or we could even act out anything in slow motion. What if I acted out the idea of a race in slow motion? Here we go. Are you ready? Running toward the goal. Reaching for the finish line. Extending yourself. And maybe you're at the head of the pack. So you're going to win. You're going to raise your hands and break through the ribbon. and celebrate in slow motion that you just won the race. Yahoo! Well, thank you all for joining me. This has been Living a Graceful Life. And I'm here to remind you that it's never too late to begin to make the choices to create the life that you want to live. You can find out more about Ageless Grace at agelessgrace.com. Thank you.